I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan, and in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the entirely merciful. Assalamu alaikum to everybody out there, and welcome to another episode of the New Islam. And on the New Islam, we like to talk about the matter of the riser of the family of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Qa'im. And we discuss the divine knowledge that is prophesized for him to bring to the people, and we get into a bit of this divine knowledge, and we like to take questions as well. So as we're going on, feel free to call into the show. But before we get started, I'd like to give a warm welcome and salam alaikum to my dear brother Hussam.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. And salam alaikum everybody, and welcome back.
Perfect. So yeah, while we discuss the divine knowledge of the Qa'im alayhi salatu wasalam on this channel, we understand that this knowledge is going to be very, very difficult for the people to handle. And that's very obvious because it is mentioned that Islam started as something strange and it will return to being something strange as well. So glad tidings to the strangers. So of course the message and what the Mahdi and the Qa'im alayhi salatu wasalam is teaching is going to be strange to the people. So what we've seen is that a lot of people have comments and questions about exactly what the Mahdi is bringing to the people. And yesterday we touched on a few of those comments. And today we'd like to discuss the matter of, do people have the right to question a divinely appointed person by God? We see in today's day and age, Abu Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he's actually made a video on this exact topic, basically saying, are divine individuals above the law?
Yeah. And also, like, what kind of knowledge do they have? Like, certain people will say, for the sake of argument, that, say, for example, they would disbelieve because they would say that, the Mahdi must know what's inside of me, and therefore he must judge based what I know. And so they might test people, they might try to test the Mahdi alayhi salatu wasalam, or test the Mahdi, or the Prophet of their time, with certain tests that don't make any sense, because how they approach it is, if he is divinely inspired, or if he is divinely sent by God, then he must know what's inside of the people. And if there is somebody who's say for example a psychopath or something like that, then they must know, and they must identify that person directly without any sort of without any sort of a blemish. And say for example somebody who's going to betray, or somebody who's going to come out apostate from the da'wah, then they must know that person beforehand, and therefore they must tell the people about him beforehand. So these are certain judgments that the people automatically have. But technically speaking, as Abu Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam had said to us, he said, if you do disbelieve in a Mahdi or in a prophet because of this, then the first prophet you should disbelieve in is Jesus Christ.
Exactly. Because, when it comes to Jesus, it's very evident that Jesus appointed one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot.
Yeah.
And he actually appointed him to be the minister over all of the finances of him and his disciples. And everybody knows exactly what happened with Judas Iscariot. He betrayed Jesus and actually was the cause for the crucifixion and the murder of Jesus at the hands of the Romans.
Yeah, and exactly in the Bible, in John 12:3-8, you'll find something very interesting there, where then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume, and she poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But one of his disciples, which is Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. So he was he was like actually very careful. He was like, okay, let's see what's his argument. Why wasn't this perfume, he said, sold and the money given to the poor? So in apparent, if you meet this person, if you were there, you would think this person is so pious.
Exactly.
The piety of this person is amazing. He's like actually worried about the poor people. It was worth a year's wage, he says. And he did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. So he was a thief, as the Bible testifies. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Leave her alone, Jesus said. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. So Jesus Christ alayhi salatu wasalam knew. Obviously he knew. Or did he? right? Like, so the situation is here, is how are you going to tell? So did Jesus alayhi salatu wasalam hear and see and still allow Judas to steal? Because the Bible here clearly states that he's a thief.
Exactly. He was stealing
So-
from the money that he was.
Whoever wrote that part definitely knows that he's a thief. Is accusing him of thievery, saying that he's helping himself into the pockets of this, into the house of funds, the bank. You can imagine. So did Jesus hear and see that this man was stealing, one of his disciples, and he still allowed him to steal? Or rather, does he hear and see what God wills, and does he conceal what God wills? Like, so the idea is this, and so the idea is very simple here. Does he hear and see and still allow him to steal, or he only hears and sees what God wills?
Exactly.
And God shows him what he will and conceals from him what he wills.
Exactly. So yeah, the idea is very simple when it comes to this specific incident with Judas Iscariot and Jesus, peace be upon him. It shows that the divinely appointed messenger, even if they were to appoint such a man, appoint somebody who turns around and becomes a hypocrite and backstabs him, it gives us no right to judge that divinely appointed individual, because just like the brother mentioned, God reveals to that individual what he wills and keeps from him what he wills, and we do not know what God reveals to him, and we don't know what God conceals from him.
Exactly. And so then that's one thing that people might say in the say debates or whatever it is that we have on daily basis when we're conversing with people. They say, you're Mahdi, like say for example, certain people apostated, and they go like, oh, how could they apostated, and yet they were in positions of power? How did how did your Mahdi, for example, not do anything about that, or not tell the people to be careful or something like this?
Or how did your Mahdi not know they were going to
know that they were going to apostate, and that he's still putting them in whatever? This is for you, Jesus Christ, alayhi salatu wasalam, who is actually appointing somebody who's in charge of the house of funds, one of the most sensitive locations to be in charge of.
100%.
And yet he was a thief, and yet Jesus allowed him to be there. So what's going on here? There's something either wrong with the understanding of the people of how much these prophets and messengers knew, or how they approach knowledge and how knowledge is given to them, or it is something wrong with, basically it has to be something wrong with the understanding of the prophets and the messengers, that's all. So then that's one point that we can make, and alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Abba Sadiq has clarified this point for us in a very clear cut way. So the next point, we can go to the next point.
Yeah, is now if, let's say, someone claims to see the messenger of God, caught drinking, is he not to be believed in? It's a very, very interesting question, because a lot of people want to come out and judge these divinely appointed individuals. But when you look at Prophet Noah, a chosen man, this is exactly what happened in his case.
Yes, exactly. You have Noah alayhi salatu wasalam in the Genesis book 9, chapter verses 20-24. It says something very simple. It says, Noah alayhi salatu wasalam, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard, which is for what, yani?
Yeah,
of course, for drinking wine. So to making wine. So when he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside of his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked backwards and covered their father's naked body. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father naked. When Noah awoke from his wine, he found out what his youngest son had done to him. So now this is for the Muslim brother who's like, say for example, comes and he sees you, like, say for example, in the case of somebody who's thinking, oh, if we see somebody, if you guys say alcohol is haram, alcohol is this, alcohol is that, we say it's alcohol is haram and you guys are drinking alcohol or something like that, or you see something in his hand or something like that and start accusing Abu Sadiq of all this kind of stuff. Alcohol was never made forbidden to begin with, except for in the sixth covenant for the Muslims who actually used to, for a very specific reason to begin with. The reason for that being that they used to come to the prayer drunk. They used to take each other's lives. They used to be crazy. You know, when it comes to the matter of like the alcohol, they used to be addicts to it, uncontrollable. Completely, like imagine a culture where a lot of people are just uncontrollably drinking. That's how the Middle East was. Sometimes because of the bad water and how much diseases they get from it, they would like actually rather drink wine instead of water because it was more sanitized. So the idea is this: you can imagine now a whole culture that's actually doing that. Of course, at some point you have to like come down with a law and say everybody's is forbidden to do that.
Exactly. And it's very fascinating because that's the only covenant where alcohol is mentioned to be haram.
Exactly.
The sixth covenant.
Exactly. So that's the idea. It's like then it becomes also Jesus Christ has turned water into wine. So if it was by nature bad, why would it be? Why would it be used in that? Why would Jesus turn water into wine? You know? And why would it exist in heaven to begin with?
Exactly.
Why would wine, rivers of wine according to Islamic teaching, exist in heaven? And yet here you're just the only people on that say that it was made forbidden by God for them. Like out of the Abrahamic religions, you're the only people in the the Muslims are the only people who it was made forbidden for them to drink alcohol. So the idea is this: is for us it is halal. For us, يعني Abu Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam has made an episode about that in the YouTube channel, which is alcohol halal? Al-Mahdi reveals the shocking truth. So for sure, you will understand a lot more about this concept. Even in Islamic theology, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to drink something called nabidh. For example, nabidh is the fermented date syrup, you can imagine, which is what, yani? That's date wine.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like if you allow
wine almost out of anything,
it's literally if it's fermented and dates are very sweet, so you have a high content of sugar. If it's a fermented high content sugar drink, for sure that is wine that has alcohol in it, and the Prophet used to drink it.
Exactly. So the idea is, do you have the right to disbelieve in a divinely appointed individual if they were to be found, let's say, drunk or drinking alcohol?
Exactly.
And from the examples that we've shown here with Prophet Noor and with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in certain hadiths, that is not a reason for you to disbelieve in a divinely appointed individual.
Exactly. And this one is for the Christian brothers, maybe. Because this next one is for the Christian brothers and sisters. God bless them. He says, would it be also acceptable to disbelieve in a messenger of God if you found him marrying many women? I mean, if that is the case, then we should also disbelieve in Solomon. King Solomon had how many wives?
Over 1,000 wives and
700 wives and 300 something concubines. So if you do run into a divinely appointed man and he's married many women, is that something of a reason to disbelieve in him? To say, I don't want to follow him. I cannot believe in him. No, it's still not a good reason for you. Even though our Imam alayhi salatu wasalam is married only to one, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, it's like very clearly in front of everybody. Though, even that is not a good reason. Even if you saw you wouldn't have a good valid reason to say just because he is doing such, therefore he's not a messenger of God, therefore he's not appointed by God. This is also not an excuse that is accepted in the sight of God. If Solomon alayhi salatu wasalam in the book of Genesis or Kings, you'll have it here in the books of Kings. Actually, the first King Solomon said, whoever loved many foreign women. However, King Solomon loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter. He loved Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sudanians, and Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, you must not intermarry with them. So it's not even just the fact that Solomon was marrying these women just because they were believers or something. Actually, the Lord told the Israelites, you should not marry from these people, and he still married from them. You should not intermarry with them. He says, you must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods. Nevertheless, Solomon had held fast to them in love. And he had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines.
Exactly. So the idea for this one is very, very simple, right? If you find a divine individual having multiple wives or going against the ruling of God on certain things, especially when it comes to this topic of wives, that's not a reason for you to disbelieve in them either.
Again, it's this divine immunity that we spoke about in many lectures, and inshallah, Abu Sadiq mentioned it in his lecture series. So it's this divine immunity. Once he's sitting on the throne and he is appointed by God, let God be the judge. Let God be the judge of that personality in the end. You cannot make yourself a judge over the judge without the appointment of God. This is the problem that people need to kind of comprehend a little bit, and which is what Abu Sadiq has helped us comprehend, because we did not understand these things before. It didn't make sense to us, and he came and he explained it in such an easy, simple way for us to kind of understand.
Exactly.
Maybe we can go to the next one.
Yeah, so that'll bring us to our next point is, let's say a divinely appointed individual was to disobey God, would that be a reason for us to disbelieve in that individual? Now we find that Prophet Yunus himself actually did this very, very act. It is stated that Jonah got up and ran away from the Lord by going to Tarshish. So when God commanded Jonah of his duties, he disobeyed God and ran away.
Yeah.
And we still see that he was still counted as one of the prophets of God, regardless of him being disobedient. He repented to God, and God still kept him as one of his prophets.
Exactly.
So an divinely appointed individual disobeying God does not give us the right to disbelieve in that individual.
Yes, again, this is between him and God as authority, because what is a divinely appointed man? He's the king, he is the ruler, he is the authority figure. So between him and God, God took the justice. He gave justice back to its place. He places the things in the right place. So it's not our point to say, oh, because you disobeyed, therefore we can't believe in you anymore. No. Once you have a divinely appointed messenger of God, that is it. You have to stick to them till the end. And this is because between you and God, there is a relationship. It's the relationship of obedience to a man who's appointed by God. And imagine if in a soldier in the middle of a platoon or something like that. I mean, the commander of the platoon, even if he makes a mistake, the justice is going to come back on him, but the soldier is to fulfill his duty. You have to fulfill the duty as soldiers of God, as believers of God. And then let God do the justice, because we are believers. We're not atheists. You understand?
Exactly.
So then we can go to the next one.
Yeah, I was going to say actually another example that everybody's probably pretty familiar with is Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. That's the greatest example.
Exactly.
Everybody knows that he outright disobeyed God. He's the first covenant. Almost everybody who's religious knows about this story. Yet God still keeps him as the first prophet and allows him to appoint successors and rulers after himself.
Exactly. So this is where we're at right now. As for, is it acceptable to disbelieve in a messenger who is accused of a crime like murder, for example? Is that the case? Can we disbelieve? Can say, for example, if we're following a messenger of God and then lots of people are saying, hey, by the way, he's accused of murder, he's a murderer. Should we disbelieve in that messenger?
Well, I mean, if we were to disbelieve in that messenger, then we would have to disbelieve in Moses himself, because this is the same exact thing that happened to Moses alayhi salatu wasalam.
Exactly. And so even these accusations that you would hear against, say, for example, a messenger who's of God, a messenger who's sent by God, say for the sake of argument today, if you hear, or in the past, in the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how many accusations did they accuse him? They accused him of being a poet, a liar, a hearer, like of things, a mage, all kinds of things.
Magician.
Yes, exactly. All kinds of things that they've accused him of. They've accused him of assassinations, by the way. They've accused him of all kinds of manners of accusations. Should we believe in them or should we disbelieve?
Exactly.
No, it's a problem because you have people like Moses alayhi salatu wasalam. The story of Moses is one of the most challenging things in the world, for people of that time. And if you imagine it today, it's no difference. Imagine, for example, a tyrant, yes? One of the tyrants, whatever you imagine a tyrant is. You just name it. Some people see Putin as a tyrant. Some people see, like say, for example, in Iran. Some people see Mohammed bin Salman. Some people see whoever you see as a tyrant. Imagine if from his household today came out a man with a tablet and he says, by the way, I am a messenger from God. And I'm here to save you. That's the kind of level of difficulty that Moses had kind of faced his people with.
Exactly.
It's like Saddam Hussein, for example, one of his kids came out and said, by the way, I'm a messenger from Allah. It's very strange. It's shocking. It's shocking. It's like
100%.
this person lived his whole life in luxuries. He lived his whole life in the castles and has been educated by this guy, by this tyrant and everything like that. And now he's pretending to be. It's very difficult.
Absolutely.
But even if he comes out of a background that is rich, it doesn't matter. You cannot disbelieve in him. So long as he fits the law of knowing the hujjah, you cannot disbelieve in him. And so the idea is very simple here. Even if he is accused of whatever crime that you hear, you cannot disbelieve in him if he fulfills the criteria of identifying the hujjah, of how to identify.
Exactly. And it's very important because it's something that has happened to every single prophet and messenger in time. They have always been accused and slandered of lies, regardless of what it is. And this is why the idea of divine immunity is so important. And this is why we're going over all of these topics. Regardless of what this divinely appointed person does, we have no right to judge that individual.
Yes.
Because the enemies of these people are always going to accuse them of many different things.
Exactly. And so then we can move on. So would it then be, would it be acceptable to disbelieve in the messengers of God who had a desire for a married woman, for example, and took his son's wife, for example, to marry her?
Yeah, it's a very good question, especially for Muslims, because if they believe that's the case, and they, for example, if the Mahdi alayhi salatu wasalam was to do that and they would disbelieve in him, then they would have to disbelieve in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi.
Wow.
Because he actually he had feelings for his adopted son's wife, Zainab.
Zaid, his son, he was married to a person, and obviously the narrations do say that for those who do know about the story, and because I know that a lot of people, like in Christianity and Islam, they fight over this one very heavily. The Prophet ﷺ, when he liked her, when he says his statement about her, he says, MashaAllah. And Zayd said, okay, if the Prophet likes her, then I'm going to have to divorce and give her to him in marriage. So the idea is that first of all, you have to understand, like the Prophet ﷺ, it's halal for him to do that. She's not related to him in blood. She's not related to him in any way, shape, or form. And it was done because of the desire, the love of Zayd and both of them, they agreed to the whole scenario and they went through with it. So who are we to judge a man because of something like this? You are not a judge. That's what we are trying to prove. We're trying to prove here one very simple thing. Once you identify a man of God, then it is not up to you to judge him. He is the judge. And he has the immunity from God so that he can be protected from the lying deceivers, traitors, and sinners who want to tarnish his name with evil. So you cannot actually not give him that aura, that protection from the judgment of the eyes of the people.
Exactly. And it's also because, like you mentioned, brother, we do not know what God has revealed to this person, and we don't know what God has withheld from this person. So we are no judge upon these individuals who are a judge upon us. It's very It's interesting because it's basically like, let's say if somebody came to your house and they were a guest, right? Would you have the same rules and the same laws as your guest?
Yeah.
It's the same idea when you look at all of these divinely appointed individuals. They're the ones that are the owners of all of these laws and jurisprudences that they are putting upon the people. So, of course, they're going to be above the laws that they put upon the people.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's exactly where we are today, where we're saying that you cannot rule the king with the same rulings of everybody else, because the king is a king. He has to deal with so much more stuff that are different than what the normal man deals with. If you're a farmer, for example, you don't deal with the same problems of a king. You don't deal with the same dynamics of a king. This is completely different life. A king is like might have to do like political marriages for the sake of argument, just for the sake of historical narrative. That's what kings do. They marry into for politics, for keeping tribes from, which is what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has done. He's married many of his marriages were actually like based on keeping tribes links. He's linking tribes together and also making them settle down so that we can he can create peace in the land. So moving on, would it then be acceptable for us to disbelieve in the messenger of God if you found him, for example, sleeping with a married woman? Which is a big one, this one.
Yeah,
It's in the minds of a lot of people is like a huge, gigantic one.
Exactly, because adultery is one of the major sins regardless of whatever religion you look at.
Exactly.
And the reason why this is an interesting question, because when you look into the Bible, this exact event occurred with one of the greatest prophets that all the religions actually know about.
Yep.
And it's actually mentioned in Samuel, verses 2-5. It states, "One evening David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, 'She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite.' Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her." So clearly here in the verse, you can see that Bathsheba was a married woman.
Yes.
She was married to Uriah the Hittite. And even though David knew about this, and he knew Uriah himself, he still proceeded to sleep with that female.
Yes, exactly. And in fact, she became pregnant from him. And in fact, she became pregnant with who? With King Solomon, the prophet of God.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, that's exactly why we don't have the right to judge the actions of these individuals, because from that action there, where a lot of people see it as something that's disobeying God, and it's an act of adultery, and it's just a heinous act in the eyes of many people.
yes.
In reality, it was something that bore the fruit of Solomon, which is one of the greatest prophets of God as well.
Yeah, and in fact, it's almost like the crime was not really in the story of David, what he did, because if it was a crime, then why would God kind of like give him the reward of having a Solomon as a king from her?
Exactly.
So it doesn't make sense. It's like it's almost saying that the real crime, though, the real crime was after he judged himself to be such. Right, David alayhi salatu wasalam, after he was approached by the some narrations say prophet, some narrations say like some two people came to him to make a judgment on their case, and one of them says, "Hey, I have 99 sheep." In the Quran, it's mentioned as I have 99.
Yes,
the story
yep.
of 99 sheep versus one sheep, and he says that my brother took over my sheep, which is just one. I just had one sheep, and he had 99. What do you do? And he says that he judged that it was an oppression. And it was only because of that judgment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had punished David alayhi salatu wasalam in the way that he did in the Bible, in a very very directly intense way. Like the punishment of David was not small.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. Yeah.
It was intense.
So yeah, the idea of that.
And again, God is the judge,
Exactly. So it makes sense what you're saying about what God actually punished David for. It was the fact that he was saying that somebody who was taking more from somebody who had less was wrong, although he did the same exact thing to Uriah.
And he did the judgment.
Exactly.
So he judged himself, basically.
Exactly.
Now, it makes you think if David at that time, as Abu Sadiq made us think, if David at that time actually decided to judge, say it's okay, there's no problem.
Yeah.
What would God just let it go to? Because
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So if that's the case, then what is the crime? The crime is that actually he just wanted to murder somebody for the sake of his own. That was really the thing, that he was about to get punished if it wasn't for God actually like kind of making a kind of deal with Uriah. So yeah, let's continue from there, inshallah. As for, would it be acceptable then, brother, to disbelieve in a messenger of God who marries his own daughters or sister or a mother or a father? Is that something that we should, if, say, for example, a messenger of God, should we disbelieve in them because of something like this?
Yeah, when you mention that to a lot of people, it's going to throw a lot of people off.
Oh, for sure,
Like,
especially
oh my goodness. Exactly, yeah. But for people who investigate and know the truth, you can see that this is something that has already happened in the past with the previous prophet and messenger. When you look at the story of Lot, alayhi salatu wasalam, you can see that his daughters actually bore his own children.
Yeah,
so, exactly. So this is something that's clearly evident that has happened before with one of the prophets and messengers.
Yeah.
So if you were to see any prophet or messenger do the same act, as long as they're divinely appointed, just like we've been mentioning, the whole idea is you are no judge over this divinely appointed person. You don't know what God has revealed to them, and you don't know what God has concealed from them. We have no idea.
Exactly. And I think, as you can read in front of you, concerned for their father having descendants. This is the story of Lot and his daughters. One evening, Lot's eldest daughter gets Lot drunk and has intercourse with him without his knowledge. The elder daughter then insisted that her younger sister also gets their father. Lot drank and had intercourse with him, and she made him drunk, and he had intercourse with her, which the younger sister Dolly did on the following night. So they did, both of them, both daughters of Lot, got him drunk so that he doesn't know what he's doing, to a degree where he doesn't know what's going on, and they would get impregnated by him. This is a reality that is mentioned in the Bible.
Exactly.
You can read the story in the Bible. It's there. It is in Genesis 19:30-38. You can for more specifically. So the idea is that if that is the case, you have to have the reason for these daughters to do something so massive in the eyes of the people. At the same time, it was because they believed that this is it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has just destroyed the entirety of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? He just wiped them, and their mother just died, turned into a pillar of salt, and so now they're imagining that this is it. That's it. We don't have any more humans on earth today. It's just us. And so what do? They go through with that, and they wanted the lineage of their father to be continued in a way or another, just like the way Adam, for example, did.
Exactly. And it's also something that Abraham alayhi salatu wasalam did as well. For anybody who's not familiar with the story of Lot, I know everybody is familiar with the story of Abraham. And he did marry his half-sister as well.
Exactly.
So this is something that we see happen with other prophets and messengers. So if a divine...
even Islamic, by the way.
Exactly. It's Islamic as well. But it does look like we have a call. Abu Daniel?
Hello, hi, assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Wa alaikum salam.
I just want to ask a couple of questions. I don't care about, you guys got a new religion, fair enough. But I just want a couple of questions. The other day I heard Abdullah Hasham does miracles. So I just want to know some of his miracles so I can understand how it works. Like I heard the other day Hasham said he saw the moon disappear. Is this true?
Yes, brother. We have many people who testified this. There is a video called Miracles of the Mahdi, or a playlist as well of miracles on the YouTube channel, the Ahmadi Religion of Peace and Light. Inshallah, you'll be able to join that channel and see for yourself the testimonies from the Imam, from Abu Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, healing people from like dire situations, literally so dire that it's like a life and death scenario, from resurrecting the dead to turning leaves into fish, to walking on a piece of land and it turned from dead to alive, to Abu Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, telling people what's inside of them, telling people what's going to happen to them before if they were to drive, telling people what's the continuing and finishing people's dreams for them, like literally telling them exactly what they are what they are seeing, the miracle of the disappearing of the moon, the miracle of actually telling us that within the next few days we're going to see something in the sky, and we did. It was like a big giant light that came out of the sky and it exploded in front of us, and it was intense. And it was not close. It was very, very, very far in distance. And we have a video about that, actually. It's really amazing. To all kinds of things that Abu Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam has managed to, do for in front of many of the believers in the community.
And can I take your word for it? How would I know if it's accurate? Can I take your word for it?
Say one more time. Sorry.
How can I take your word for it? How would I know if it's accurate? If this stuff really happened?
It's very good because it's a good question, because how you'd have to first investigate the authority of this man if he is actually truly who he claims he is, because miracles are not a way of identification of a truth claimer versus not truth claimer. The miracle is there to give more of a support, right, to the believers so that they increase in faith. But it's not like, for example, Moses.
Yep.
Moses didn't convince Pharaoh and his people with his miracles, right? The only people who got convinced were actually the magicians themselves, who knew the magic tricks, and they were like, "Oh, that's not magic, that's divine."
Yeah, I understand. Like, for example, no, it brings me to another question. In one of his, I read a little bit of his book, right? And he said, the idols in Mecca, I don't know the name, Uz.
Uzza.
Yes, apparently they were prophets. When Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam clearly said that there's a hadith regarding of one of them, which says that one of them was a jinn. So how can you say they are prophet? And also Alexander the Great, he was a known polytheist. So how can you call him a prophet when he called when he was against one God and this and that?
Yeah, so as for the first part of your question, I mean, Latu al-Uzza, Abu Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, has confirmed that they were before that. They were prophets and messengers, and they were turned into idols that were worshipped. So even if you have a hadith, even if you have a hadith, it doesn't really hold in front of his word. Do you understand? Because you have, for example, just before the live ends, because we have about a minute left, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he came and he spoke to the Christians, he told them, "Your Jesus was not crucified." They were like, "What are you talking about? We have it in our books. It is in the book. It's the Bible saying it." So you cannot argue against the man. That's our argument. Our argument is, if you want the true world view of God and his religion, you have to identify the man of God who can tell you what is true and what is not true. That's literally what it is. As for basically that Alexander the Great question, Alexander the Great was not a polytheist. He was literally a monotheist. The fact of the matter is, he recognized the God story in all of the cultures he went to. That's the difference. Like Abu Sadiq and how he's doing today, Hinduism, he showed us the true monotheistic faith of Hinduism. He's seeing through the falsehood that is spread. That's what he does. He's not a polytheist at all. And I do thank you for your call, but we have to end the call right now because we're running a show, or we're very short on times here. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Yeah, so that should give people a general idea of what we are trying to convey, that the divinely appointed individual cannot be judged by common people. We don't have the right to judge this individual because we don't know what God has revealed to him and what God has concealed to him as well.
Okay, that's really all that we have for you today. Thank you so much. God be pleased with all of you. Inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much, brother, for being here. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.